Welcome, everybody. This is the DRB for January 11th. Go ahead and get this meeting started. We have one item on the agenda. It's a request by VRMT4 for a preliminary plat review for a 17-lot residential PUD, including open space lot with phased development proposed. This is at 91 Government Peck Road, which is Governor Peck Road, which is in the rural agricultural residential zoning. And we're going to approve minutes, talk about 30 minutes about village hall. That's the agenda for today, just the one item. So the proceedings will be conducted today in an orderly manner. This is the DRB's rules and procedures. Written copies of the rules and procedures are available, and we'll walk you through the important parts of the process. So has there been any ex parte communication on this item from the board members?
No.
No? Ben?
No.
Thanks, Ben. So I'm going to first read to you about the interested party rule, just so that people understand who interested parties are, so that if there is an appeal, the people who are interested parties are the ones that would need to appeal. Interested parties include the applicant, or if the applicant does not own the property, the person owning title to the property, a person owning or occupying property in the immediate neighborhood of a property that is the subject of any zoning decision or act, who can demonstrate a physical or environmental impact on the person's interest under the criteria reviewed, and who alleges that the decision or act, if confirmed, will violate the municipal plan or bylaw. Any 10 persons, either voters or landowners, who by signed petition to the DRB allege that the decision or act, if confirmed, will violate the municipal plan or bylaw, the petitioners must designate one person to serve as representative. Why is this important? Though many members of the public may be interested in the zoning permit application, only statutorily defined interested persons may appeal a decision of a zoning officer or DRB. If an interested party fails to make a timely appeal, they are bound by the officer or DRB's decision. Only those interested persons who have participated in a DRB proceeding may appeal a decision re-entered into that proceeding in environmental court. So you have to be here in order to appeal into the environmental court. Pursuant to state statute, participation consists of offering oral or written testimony, evidence, or a statement of concern related to the subject of the proceeding. If there were to be an appeal of the work we do tonight, the DRB does not determine who is an interested person. That is part of the appeal process. But we do need to establish who participated in the hearing. To help that, we ask two things. Please sign in on the sign-in sheet, or if you are participating by video, provide your contact information in the meeting chat or by email to the zoning administrator, Chris Flynn. Second, when you speak in the hearing, please tell us your name loud and clear so that we can record it in the meeting minutes. Thank you for your cooperation. So our first item, our only item today, is the presentation by VRMT4 for a preliminary plat review. And who's going to be presenting?
Do you want us to come up to the front?
Please.
Right there, yeah.
I guess just make sure you don't put anything over the mic. That, like, I guess causes a lot of feedback.
Sure. Should I move it if there's two of
No,
us?
no.
Just leave it right where it is?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Well, Happy New Year. Thanks for having us. I'm Joe Green, a member of VRMT4. This is John Grenier of Grenier Consulting Engineering. He's our civil engineer. With me is Henry Perot and Amanda Lamb, and my wife Pam Green. The four of us are partners at VRMT4. So, yeah, I'd like to start, I guess, first and foremost, by apologizing to both the DRB, the members of the public, and Chris, because I think since our sketch plan review hearing, we submitted an application for preliminary review. And I think when we left the sketch plan review, we left with some impressions that maybe we should have followed up on to get clarification. But regardless, we submitted an application based on our impressions from not only that meeting, but within the subsequent sub-advisory committees of the town that we met with. I'm saying that in the context of Chris has rightfully described this application as an application for a 17-lot PUD with an open land, based on our cover letter and our request to consider it as such in a phased capacity. But what we actually did, and I once again have to thank my wife for bringing me back down to the ground in many cases, because I will read my own words numerous times, and to me it makes perfect sense. But when Chris reached out the other day, and Chris has reached out numerous times, and I appreciate that, to suggest to me that this is indeed what we've asked for, I said, well, Chris, no, that's not what we asked for. And so, being humbled as I am by my wife, I read my own words, and as she described it, as somebody who knew nothing about this project. And when I did that, it was clear to me that we could have led to some confusion that said, we're requesting a full review of 17-lot PUD with one open lot. Our request and our intent, which I think is echoed throughout the application, is for you to consider a planned unit development at this parcel, but tonight we're asking to permit 8 residential lots and 1 open lot. In keeping with the bylaws, we want to make the case to you that that lot, that tract, is capable of a density that's greater than that number of lots. So the request that we're really asking for is to consider permitting 8 lots of an otherwise larger tract of land that could have a capacity of more lots in the future. And if we've expressed that in a confusing way or somehow misguided that, I want to apologize. Again, we wanted to submit a thorough application, and I think based on our sketch plan review, comments and review, we thought that our request had been clear. So once again, I want to thank Chris for all his time, and my apologies extend deeply because I know that there was extra effort put into reviewing something that possibly we weren't even asking for. So nobody wants to waste their time over the holidays especially, so if you guys spend a lot of time digging into things that really we're not asking for, then I apologize. Otherwise, we're here tonight to try to begin this process, and I guess I want to pause because if our request, as I'm stating it to you now, changes the direction or anything technical about how the project needs to be warned, et cetera, then obviously I want to give you guys a chance to let me know that. But as this is preliminary review, and again, we're trying to learn your process. We've never been through the town of Jericho's process, so we understand that through preliminary review, we're trying to uncover all the facts of this so that when we get to final review, it's more of a rubber stamp. And that's with no preconceived notion that we're going to get through it in one day, because it is a relatively large proposal in general, albeit we're considering this an 8-lot PUD request tonight.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. That does make it easy. I don't see any reason that we can't go ahead with the review as an 8-lot PUD.
I think we just want to get some clarification.
I'd like to hear Chris's view on that.
Because what we need to do is, and I guess, Joe, I'm going to look at Exhibit 31.
Sure.
And this is just, I mean, this is all for clarification to make sure we're all on the same page. Because this is the plan that basically shows a roadway and access to 8 lots. And it shows a remaining parcel, excuse me, of essentially 104 acres, 104.6 acres.
Okay.
So what you're formally asking is for the board to review essentially this plan, you know, and then out of that 104, well, actually out of the 132 acres, 50% of that's going to be left into open space. And so there'll be bear with me one second. So there'll be basically an 8-lot subdivision with approximately, a 66-acre open space lot, which will leave an additional lot of approximately like 34 acres for future development. Is that what you're asking for tonight?
So not specifically. I think, and this is, I think, where we can certainly talk about how we're approaching this. When we reviewed the zoning regulations under sections 10.12, standard subdivision, and then 10.13, planned unit development, our read of the planned unit development regulations states that the density of a tract is based on the total acreage and the underlying zoning district lots size. So when we took a look at this, well, let me step back just a second. The first thing we need to do, obviously, is understand the total lot. But to get to your question, Chris, we took a look at the entire acreage as required in 10.13 and said, with this total acreage, if we were to do a standard subdivision and we divided it by 10-acre lots, as that is the underlying zoning district and the RAR district, that would mean that we could get 13-point-something lots. There's two ways to establish density within your zoning regulations as I read it. One, with a PUD, is to take the existing total acreage and subtract 25% of that acreage to get to a base acreage. So that establishes a base lot density if we're going to go to a PUD. As part of the other requirements for a PUD, we have to commit to keeping a minimum of 50% of the initial acreage forever undeveloped. But that forever undeveloped can be part and parcel of a single lot, multiple lots, or areas within a lot not to be undeveloped. So I'd like to talk more about density, but to try to answer your question more directly, if we are successful in the 8-lot PUD that we're requesting, which those lots are roughly 3 acres, then that would secure 24 acres of a 130-plus acre tract. But the starting question has to be, what does the initial tract have for capacity for density? So we're here tonight to demonstrate to you that we think it has a capacity of upwards of 19 lots total. Even though we're only asking permission to build 8 of them today, that tract has that capacity. And so long term, even if 8 lots are built today, the parcel has the capacity to contain that quantity of lots. And we can talk about what that quantity is, but that's our approach. So we respect the fact that 50% of the acreage at some point has to be kept undeveloped. And we respect the fact that there's 2 ways to calculate the density, and we'd love to work with the DRB to get to an agreed upon number. Our approach was to take the approach of looking at the lot density and then showing you a plan that maybe reflected that. So we're not subtracting 50% of the acreage and 25% of the acreage and then calculating density. And we're not subtracting 8 lots and 50% of the acreage and then calculating density. What we're doing is we're calculating the density first, because I think it's 10.13.8.2, subsection H, basically states that any remaining lots in a subdivision or PUD that is not developed and subsequently either developed or transferred, the density of that remaining lot is still based on the original density of the original tract. So that's a lot of words, but from our perspective, we need to look at the total parcel as we start today and understand from the DRB's perspective what they think the capacity of that site is. And then, yes, we assume that capacity is going to be greater than 9, based on everything that we've looked at. but we only want permission to do 8 today, and then maybe someday in the future, come back for more. Or there's so many avenues that we could go down. I mean, and I don't want to get into a rabbit hole, but you know, affordable housing and working with the town, those are all avenues that we're pursuing right now for potential future opportunities. But right now, we just need to try to agree on how do we get to a density for the lot.
So when you look at 1013.7.2, you got to apply all the sub-criteria. You can't just carve out one and say, okay, well, we meet this. You got to meet all the criteria, you know, A through H.
Mm-hmm.
The application material that's been provided only addresses one. So we've got, there's a lot of information that needs to be developed to get to us with regards to that density plan. That being said, we've also had discussion, you and I have had discussion with regards to, we don't have, if you want to go with 17 lots, that's the avenue we go with. We don't have an avenue within the regulations that says we do 8 lots today. Well, what we could do is we could say, we've got basically, we're going to do, you know, 8 lots, and we're going to dedicate open space based on the 132 acre lot. We're going to leave a remaining lot as a developable lot, which would be lot number 9. And whatever that size of that lot is, that's going to have its own separate density. If you want to use the whole parcel and you want to go for a density bonus and you want to talk density, then we do that all at once. We don't carve it out, and we don't do some of it today, some of it 5 years, because our regulations don't allow that. If that's the avenue you want to go down, it's not supported by our regulations, and I don't think you will potentially be successful for an approval. If that's something you want to do, that is your choice, and I guess I've spoken my piece, and part of my job is to enforce the regulations. Another part of my job is to get you your approvals. And if it doesn't meet the regulations, I have a hard time getting you your approvals. And so you know, that's why we've been going back and forth quite a bit on trying to clearly understand what you want to do. Because if you want to do 8 lots, 8 residential lots, we need to dedicate an open space lot, and then we have an undeveloped lot, and that probably is not going to have the density capacity to get you up to you know, an additional 9 lots to get you to 17 that you're asking for. I know you believe it does. If you want to make that argument, then maybe the first step is for the board to try to give you guidance as to, now this, you know, your lot has this much availability. You're also asking for a density bonus, which basically the board has total discretion at saying you get 100% of your ask, 0% of your ask, 10% of your ask, and we haven't even gotten to that point or threshold to get to those numbers. So it's, you know, I'm a little perplexed as to how we clearly move this forward. I mean, the board obviously will evaluate your application and your ask. Right now, we have it set at 17 residential lots with an open space lot at preliminary, and that is sort of that gets you to your total number. Now you're saying you want 8 lots with an open space lot and a future developable lot. Those things need to be established. So I guess, Joe, it'd be really good to have a idea as to how you kind of want us to proceed, because we want to make sure that we're accommodating your ask and clearly understanding it before any decision or ruling is made. The beauty that we have is we have the ability for continuation to vet this thing through for everybody's sake.
Chris, just to be clear, for interpretation's sake, what we're hearing is based on the way that the application has been submitted, it has not been submitted as Joe is requesting as an 8 lot plus 1 open lot. That's not the way that the application is submitted, and therefore cannot be reviewed that way.
I don't believe that the I guess the short answer is yes, but I don't believe it potentially needs to be rewarned because I'm not sure that basically the reduction, the overall intent of the project is the same. The numbers are being, are being altered and they're being reduced potentially. So I don't think it really needs to be rewarned to go through that process. The interested parties that have shown up are being made aware of that potential change and any sort of potential continuation. So I think that's fine. If the applicant wants to err on the side of caution, then basically he withdraws the application, we resubmit under different numbers and forms, and it gets rewarned. That would be the process in that fashion.
So, respectfully, I think we view this forum as the place to have these discussions. I mean, certainly, I don't think Chris and I see eye to eye as of yet in terms of how this rolls out, but we'd love the opportunity to walk through these zoning regulations and discuss them with the board to get an overall opinion on how these do apply and how we see them. And if we don't see them correctly, then certainly we're willing to live with that. But we've gone through this process and effort to present something to you that we think is a successful project for the town of Jericho, and we think it can be successful for everybody involved. There has been some interruption in continuity, and as I said at the beginning, a lot of that is based on how we presented it in the application process, albeit having presented it to you at sketch plan review. There are many criteria within your zoning regulations, as you know. And for me, I always feel more comfortable with a systematic approach that just goes almost bullet point by bullet point to check those boxes. I don't want to get wrapped up in the weeds because to me, the two goals of tonight are to A, establish what we're asking for, and that is permission for 8 lots to be permitted, plus 1 remaining lot, and to establish what the board feels is an appropriate density for this tract. Those are the 2 main goals for us tonight. We know that just because it's preliminary review, we're not expecting to get through this in potentially 1 hearing because there are a lot of questions to be answered. But we can't talk about any other questions until we get past those 2 pieces. And with all due respect, I mean, I look at your purpose and applicability for preliminary review. And it says, preliminary review shall be required for all major subdivisions. The purpose of preliminary subdivision review is to identify significant issues or concerns associated with a proposed subdivision under the provisions of these regulations, and to provide the applicant with guidance to address identified issues and concerns prior to final engineering and approval of the subdivision as it relates to its improvements. So part of me feels like this process, this part of the process is really a dialogue to say, this is how we're approaching it. And if we've misinterpreted your regulations somehow, then we hope that you can give us some guidance on how to get it back on the rails. But I think the biggest thing that I think Chris and I are not seeing eye to eye on is how we calculate total density for this tract day 1, and then how that density is applied over the course of time. I have not found anything within the zoning regulations, and I would be more than happy to be guided to a chapter or a section that tells me if we establish a density of a number greater than the lots we're requesting today, we can then no further ask for additional lots down the road. As a matter of fact, every subsection I read allows for subsequent development and subsequent changes in the PUD. So we're here for a PUD. What I can't say to you wholeheartedly is give us permission for so many lots, because I haven't heard from you what the density is that you think is appropriate for this site. We have an argument for what we think it is, but I think we need to get to a discussion where we can look at each other and say, yeah, we agree that we're at a number that works. And then from there, decide how is that applied to the long-term life of this tract of land. As an applicant, we should be able to develop 1 lot, 2 lots, 5 lots, 8 lots, 10 lots, if the tract handles that without having to permit the entire density day one. Because as we've expressed, the only reason we're coming to you like this is because none of us want to deal with Act 250. We're willing to be patient. And the way the Act 250 rules are written is that for residential development, if no more than 9 lots are developed in a 5-year period, it does not require Act 250 jurisdiction. So that's our magic 9 lot number. We believe without even hesitation that with over 133 acres of land in a 10-acre zone, we can easily justify 9 lots. And then, Chris, I agree 100%. The density bonus conversation is completely at your discretion. You can say, yes, we agree with you and we'll give you what you're asking for, or you could say, no, we don't want to give you any density bonus. And that would be a shame, but I'm hoping that can be a dialogue.
The way I see it is what you're asking us to do is something speculative, which, I mean, is part of what we do in zoning, but what we have before us, and again, there was maybe this misunderstanding, is a request for an 18-lot subdivision. That's what we're looking at.
But what I've said is we are not requesting an 18-lot subdivision from you folks. We're asking for a planned unit development, and the only lots that we're looking to have approved are the first 8 lots, which leaves the remaining tract of land undeveloped. And that remaining tract of land is not only greater than 25 acres, it's substantial enough, whereas a standalone parcel, it could easily be subdivided again into 10-acre lots. So yes, it is speculative, but all development is speculative. And because we own a large tract, there's no requirement within the subdivision regulations or the zoning regulations that, to my knowledge, that require us to ask for the full ask day one. What we're trying to establish is what the capacity of the tract is. And that's what, in my opinion, 10.13.8 suggests. To get to a density, to identify what the potential tract can handle for a PUD. We don't know what the future is. I mean, as I said at the beginning, we have met with the Affordable Housing Committee, the Planning Commission, Community Development Committee. We've engaged them proactively to suggest, you know, through our sketch plan review process and our meetings with all of the advisory committees, we've heard the need and the request for affordable housing in Jericho. I'm still not completely sure what that means, but understanding that there's a need for housing in general. So we've approached them to say, we think we know what we want to do for at least 8 lots, but there's a large piece of land here that we have, that we can offer to the town in a public-private relationship to say, let's try to do a win-win. If the town is really looking to do or champion a project for, say, affordable housing, well then why would we commit 5 or 6 lots today that we have no idea what they are, when it could be flexibility for the town to say, hey, here's an opportunity. So that's why we're saying, let's create a density for the total tract today, because that's what the regulations suggest we need to do. And then focus on our ask today is 8 of those lots, whatever quantity that is. And again, I'm happy to see a section that tells us that we can't do that, and if we have to retract our application because of the confusion of the 17 lots in phasing, then we're happy to do that too. I mean, we don't want to put anybody in a burdensome location, but as the applicant, we obviously should be able to ask for what we're intending to do. And that story hasn't changed. I mean, you know, again, no offense, but I met with Chris before we bought the land, and we came to him with the exact same map that you saw in sketch plan, which is ostensibly the same map you're seeing today, to say, this is our approach. We want to stay out of Act 250. This is how we can do it. And at that point, there were no red flags. Matter of fact, Chris said it looks like a good project. With the caveat, don't get me wrong, I'm not putting words on, the caveat that we have to prove it out, that we have to go through the effort, and completely understood that. At sketch plan review, the board said, we have questions, there are concerns. Chris expressed concerns about density, but the chair at the time said, looks like a good project, I don't see any red flags, we just have to prove it out. So the preliminary review process, I think, is where we're trying to say, let us prove it to you, but we don't feel like we should be committed to pursuing a permit that we don't want, and we shouldn't be prohibited from the flexibility in the future for a parcel that can handle more lots than we're asking for today.
Okay. Purpose of the DRB, this is Jeff York, is not to give advice. We don't advise people. We have regulations. The town has Chris. Chris provides that sort of advice for the town to developers, not the DRB. The DRB reviews an application. So we don't do what ifs, we don't do maybes, we don't write the zoning rules, those are the zoning. We don't have any idea what's going to happen either in Act 250 or in town regulations 2 years, 5 years from now. Maybe the Affordable Committee throws all the zoning out and allows massive development on whatever is available. So we can't do a what if. If you need advice, that's what Chris is for. And but I suggest that since you already had a phased plan here, and the first phase that you showed on Exhibit 30 is an 8-lot development, I suppose that we can go through that 8-lot development if that's what you want to do. But I really don't want to, that's not the DRB's board. We review an application.
Well, sure, and we're not asking for recommendations on what ifs. We're saying that this process, by their own words, is to provide guidance to the applicant. And so what I'm saying to you is you have many discretionary criteria that you can use your judgment on. And those are speculative, those require what ifs, those require your consideration to say, this isn't a black and white criteria, therefore we need to make a determination based on the evidence that the applicant has presented us. Do we feel like he's presented enough evidence for us to say we agree? Measurables are measurables. Those are easy. Those are easy checkbox. It either adds up or it doesn't. It's the criteria that are subjective that we're looking to you to say to us, we're not necessarily going to dig our heels in the sand. We have an opinion, and we'd love to hear your opinion. It's very common that those don't align. And so, but it's also common that we can come to a happy place within those discussions. But regardless, without the conversation of density and the acknowledgement of density for the tract, it doesn't do us any good to talk about a quantity of lots for permission today because it doesn't describe what the total capacity of that site is. So I guess that's the point that we're trying to get off of that square one. And as I said at the beginning, I'm happy to go through the density requirements to talk about how we got to where we're at. But it's really important for us to understand from you, once the density is established, those are the quantity of lots that the tract is capable to have forever. It's not just today, and it's not tomorrow, it's forever.
No, that's not correct, because if the regulations change, then you're vested in those other ends
So,
as well.
right,
We don't have the mechanism in place to establish density and only approve partial density and then allow. It just doesn't work that way, Joe. We've talked about that via email. I've talked with the town attorney. Maybe what needs to happen for everybody's sake, because as Jeff said, the DRB is not charged with designing a project or doing that. They're charged with interpreting a project and the rules and applying those. So maybe the best thing to do would be to would be to meet with me, with potentially the town attorney, because we've talked about this, go through the process, try to spell it out as to here are the avenues for your application and an ask, and you can pick which avenue you want to go down. If you want to do 8 lots, then if you want to do 9 lots with an open space lot, then really probably what we should do is we're going to need to do a continuation, because we don't know, you haven't dedicated your open space lot. We haven't established the size of the remaining lot 9, which would be for future development. We haven't done those things, and so that's what you're asking for. But you're also saying, well, we want to understand what our total density allowance is, and you've made an application for 17 lots with a density bonus, but you don't want us to review that and approve that because you want to stay out of Act 250, and you want to go a different route, which our rules don't support or allow that type of review and or approval. So, I just don't. How you want us to do it? We don't have a path forward. If you want to do the 17 lots, we can review that, but you don't want to do that. If you want to do 8 lots, 9 lots, with 8 residential lots, an undeveloped lot, and an open space lot, then we should amend the plans. If we withdraw the application, we're probably looking at warning for March, because we're already getting bumped up towards the end of February hearing date. So I guess I'm just a little. I don't see a clean path forward, and
So Chris, I'm going to let John ask a couple questions, but to date, you have not pointed me towards any section in the zoning that supports what your statements are. You keep telling us that there's no path forward and that these zoning regulations don't allow us to do what we want to do, but to date, I haven't seen a reference, or you haven't directed me to a section that says, this is why I'm saying that. And then just to finish on that,
yeah.
I just want to point to one paragraph in your density calculation section. It says if a PUD.
What's the
I'm
number?
sorry, it is 10.13.7.2 subsection H. And it says if a PUD creates a lot that remains large enough to be subdivided in the future, the density potential for that lot's future subdivision is still limited by the total allowable density of the original PUD and parcel per this section. The density of any subsequent subdivision, re-subdivision, or PUD amendment may not cause the modified PUD to exceed the total potential residential density of the initial PUD and original parcel. Yep. So that speaks directly to subsequent subdivisions, re-subdivisions, or PUD amendments. So it specifically states what we're trying to do. We're establishing a density based on all of these sub-criteria, which again, I'm happy to go through all of them. If you agree with that density, or if you tell us you don't agree with it, but we do agree with this number, because again, it's just math, then that parcel is subject to that density, regardless of how many lots we ask for today. And it just says that if we come back in the future, the total density of that lot cannot exceed what the original parcel's capacity was. And that's what we're starting with. So I think it absolutely does give you the mechanism and the tool to do what we're saying. John and I have done numerous subdivisions over the last 30 years in which it has been a PUD that's preliminary reviewed based on a quantity of lots, but a density that's established on a tract of land, even without a plan. It's more of a math equation at that point, and obviously the applicant's ability to show you that it's practical, that it's feasible.
Those are master plans.
Right, exactly.
And we don't have a master plan process within the regulations.
But you do.
Specifically.
But you do. If we go to subdivision regulations, and we go to 10.12.7, it requires the step process of sketch plan review. If the applicant chooses to do it, then obviously they recommend it. If we don't do it, then we present it at preliminary review. We presented a master plan not only at sketch plan review, but when I went to you for your guidance. So subchapters 10.12.7.1 through 5 talk about the conceptual plan and what it should provide and what it doesn't need to provide. So from that perspective, it does suggest that we give the DRB an overview of what we think, speculatively, this ultimate build-out could be, so that you do have an idea and you can determine, do we think this tract can handle this ultimate build-out? But there's no position in here that forces us to ask for the full build-out day one. It specifically allows us to have subsequent redevelopment. And as a matter of fact, if you look at 10.12.4.2, it further reinforces our ask in that it talks about undeveloped acreage of greater than 25 acres that is not to be developed today, allows the DRB to waive a lot of review criteria over that tract because it just hasn't been defined yet. So you have that discretion to say, okay, we hear you, VRMT4, you're going to do 8 lots, that's going to leave about 100 acres. We're not going to scrutinize those acres today because we don't know exactly what you're doing, but we know what your density is. And if I have to take it just that one step further, 10.12.8.3 actually addresses the idea of somebody who comes in with a master plan build out that wants to phase it. The DRB, if I said to you today, I want all 17 lots, you have the discretion under that chapter to tell us, well, you can't build them all at once. We're going to make you phase it because it's just going to be too much impact on our infrastructure, too much impact on our town, so you have to phase it. We've taken the approach to acknowledge to you we don't want to impose that impact on the town all at once. There are reasons why we want to avoid it, admittedly. We want to stay out of Act 250. We're willing to be patient. You know, we're not big city developers or Chittenden County developers trying to steamroll Jericho. We're business owners in Waterbury. We're family people in Waterbury that have looked at an investment that we think could be a huge improvement for the town of Jericho. And we think we're doing it in a conscientious, respectful way. So I do think, Chris, you have the tools right in front of you to allow you to approve what we're asking to do with no imposition to the board, no imposition to the town, and allow the flexibility for us long-term to have discussions with affordable housing and community development committees and say, is there something that we can do? So that I do believe we have those tools.
A bunch of the things that you've said in areas that you've referenced, I will agree with your presentation and how you're presenting them. I'll also basically state that you're taking portions of those regulations and not the complete sort of section, and incorporating all the information that needs to be provided to get us to compliance in that area. And so if we want to go that direction, then I think there needs to, I don't think we have enough information for a board to, well, I'll let the board make that ruling, but there's a bunch of stuff. If we look at 10.13.7.2, A through H, your application only addresses, I believe, number G. It doesn't address anything else with regards to that. I don't, we don't have we have 8 residential lots, but we don't have the undeveloped lot. So we still have a bunch of information. So I mean,
we're happy to go through A through H and demonstrate to you why we think we do have that information. I mean, that again, we're happy to do that. I mean, we want to be respectful to everybody's time, but part of the review process can be detailed, and it can be, what do I want to say? It can take a long duration because we want to go through these points bullet by bullet, because if we have not provided you the information that you need for a specific subsection, then we want to come back with that. If you point to us and say, hey, you didn't meet C yet, well, then let us come back at the next hearing and show you how we meet it.
Right.
And that, we feel, is part of the process. We're not looking for a one and done here. We're looking to, again, establish that dialogue.
Right, and that was categorized in the staff notes and your response and my response back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
So that process has begun.
Chris, can I ask a technical question if you're done? I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah.
I'm John Grenier, a civil engineer, trying to help with the mapping and layout. Does the open space have to be its own defined lot, or is it an area of land in the tract not to be developed by either by deed or other restriction? Does it have to be a defined surveyed lot?
So, the answer on that is, it can be both. So you could have, restricted open space, that is part of the calculation that is on a lot.
Okay.
Traditionally, we see a dedicated lot that is open space, but we have seen, and the board has reviewed and approved in the past, where there is, it's a large tract of land, and there are portions of residential lots that have very steep slopes, like
Sure.
this area where cutting doesn't want to happen, and the environment wants to preserve that. So those have been incorporated into the open space. Each individual deed has the appropriate restrictions and things along those lines that tie into it. So yes, that's plausible to get to that 50%.
Yeah,
So-
okay. Thank you, that helps straighten that out. And I know that in pursuant of the density calculation and, total lot number, I would think that the second approach would be our approach in this, but again, I'll discuss it with my client. The second question is you mentioned the board has discretion for the density bonus. Is there a criteria that followed for that, or is it
1013.
how you feel that?
Yeah, 1013.8 basically is the section of the regulations which talks density bonus.
Okay.
And so basically, there are a bunch of criteria where you say, okay, well, we're asking for a density bonus under criteria 1 or 7 or whatever the number may be for these reasons. And we're asking for this amount. The DRB has the ability to grant up to 50% for a density bonus.
Yeah.
And they can give you 50%, 10%, 0. They have that sort of discretion. And when that ask is made for those areas for the density bonus, then we want to make sure they're buildable lots that basically you can have that, it's like any other lot. And they get identified up front, because that's the ask. So
When you say identified, you mean shown that it's plausible or actually permitted?
permitted. But see, Joe disagrees with that
Okay, all
that
right.
mechanism.
I mean,
So
all right. So you're saying, so when you ask for a density bonus to create extra lots, your opinion is that you should come in and actually permit those extra lots, not just establish the number that's plausible.
well, you need to make the ask for the board to grant it.
And by making an ask, you're saying permit them, not
Right.
just
Well, they're going to
ask.
grant it, so there'd be an approval. So that's tied to an application and a permit and things along those lines.
All right, I just wanted
Yeah.
to tweeze out
Yeah.
your
It needs to be
interpretation.
in the application.
Fair enough. When you said that there's about 7 criteria for that density bonus, is it you meet one of those and then present to the board and
Yep.
you can ask, or is it like if you
No,
meet
it's
3,
At
it's
least
better?
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure,
One.
3 is better.
The threshold's 1. So if you meet multiple,
Yeah,
fine.
and I'm kind of trying to tweeze out how you have
Yeah.
approached it in the past and what
Yeah.
you feel
Yeah.
the board becomes more and more comfortable with the density bonus. You're like, hey, we
Right.
meet 5 of the 7, or is
Yeah.
1 just gets you in the door? I'm just
No.
curious about your thoughts.
Historically, basically, we've had very few density bonuses requested, we have there was a density bonus granted, and I don't remember if it was 50% or not, but basically the applicant's request for their percentage was granted because it met the criteria and the board felt comfortable with it. So
Yeah, and I just think it's important to clarify that there are two distinct conversations, right? The total quantity of lots and the density capacity of the site are two distinct conversations, and they're not tied to each other. Again, I have not seen anything in the regulations that says if we're asking for a total lot count by density, that we have to apply for a permit to approve those. We need the board to acknowledge that calculation and to agree that yes or no. And to your point, Chris, and if that influences the percentage of bonus, then that's fine, because it is your discretion. But regardless, that task is just a calculation by looking at the exhibits that says the applicant has presented us with information that supports their request for this density bonus. Do we agree or we don't agree? It's not a request for permitting lots. It's just what is the capacity of the site. And then the applicant will apply for...
The board looks at an application, and that application has a certain number of lots that you would present your calculation for. And then we would agree or disagree in
Yes.
executive session about that number of lots. We don't take every application and say, oh, you could have done 2 more or you could have done 3 more. We don't provide that.
I understand, and we've presented all of that in this application.
Okay.
And so I guess that's what I'm saying is we have presented our side of that story in this application, and we have asked for only 8 lots in this application. Our cover letter definitely was confusing, but throughout this application, we've specifically said we're looking to approve 8 residential lots, and the entire remaining parcel at this point is the open lands, and to Chris's point, which includes the non-built out portions of the lots. So not only is that well over 50%, we have earmarked a section of the property of the 50% to not even be part of a lot. So again, we've gone through a lot of presentation at sketch plan review to show you how we've tried to limit the impact and demonstrate how we've gone above and beyond what we think the regs say. And I think we're just asking for a chance to show that to you again in this hearing. And I'm more than happy to go through our application section by section because I think it helps paint the picture. But yeah, the conversation of density isn't about approving a quantity of lots today. It's about approving the capacity of the parcel. And that's what your language says to us.
PRB does not approve the capacity of a parcel.
So I think maybe,
Okay.
and Joe,
We approve an application. We do not approve the capacity of a parcel. We verify that your application has a certain request. We verify that that request meets the regs. But we do not issue a statement for your parcel saying it can support this many. We respond to your application.
So is the density...
If you think that, 17 or 18 is the right number and you want to ask for 19 and ask for the, you can submit whatever you want to submit. But we don't interactively, we don't design your project for you.
Well, right, and we're not asking you to design it.
Yes, you are.
Well, I don't think we are.
Yes, you are.
I think what we're saying to you is that...
You're asking us to define for you the future build-out. That is your job. That's not the board's job.
And we have done that. We've presented that to you. My distinction I'm trying to make is we are not requesting that you permit all of those lots today. We're requesting that you acknowledge that this tract has that capacity for that density.
We do not do that.
Well,
if some other town does that,
No,
that's nice.
I'm
We have
just
our
telling-
regulations. We have our we have our zoning administrator with lots of experience. You can work with him. You have an engineer to help you read it. You may do that like everybody else does it, but you're not going to get it from the board. So can we go on? I'd like to stop this discussion for a while. Everybody knows where they are. If you'd like to review an application for 8 lots plus 1, we can go in that direction, I think. But if you're insisting that we define for you the number of lots on that thing, then we need to just, I would move that we continue the.
so the point I was going to possibly make, Joe, and you can weigh in on this, because Jeff's sort of giving a direction as to 2 avenues to go. One would be a continuation. We've got the sections and the points you've made with regards to your view with regards to the future build out and the overall capacity of the property and things along those lines. If we go through a continuation, those sections, the 10.13.7 and 10, I think it was 10.12.7 and 10.12.4 that you referenced, can be looked at. There can be an interpretation provided from staff, probably with basically backup from the town attorney as to whether we agree or disagree. Then the hearing can be reopened, and that will establish if we're going with 8 lots with one undeveloped lot and it's got the future capacity or not. Or Jeff's giving you your other alternative. I think we do have a hearing. We do have a continuation. We could continue to I believe it's the 25th of February. I believe that's the date. In the next Wednesday that we're meeting. Yes, it's the 25th.
February or January?
I'm sorry, January 25th.
Sorry.
And so basically what that would do is it would not involve the board, but it would basically establish what the potential density capacity for the property is, both
Obviously, the continuance to the 25th would involve the board.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically we could establish, you're asking for information that the board is not charged to give you or is going to give you. So in that interim, if we continue, we can hopefully get that answer, which basically will be the town's position. Hopefully it's in line with your position, and the application can go forward in sort of a clear fashion for a presentation for the board. The worst case scenario is the town's view is one thing and your view is another, and then we modify the application or whatever it may be to carry it forward. But as I said, there are certain aspects that you basically called out, which I do recognize, and I understand your point. There are other subsections that are involved in those criteria that may impact that. Whether it's a plus or a minus, I don't know at this point. So that is one option with a continuation, and the intent between now and the continuation is basically clearly going to establish what's the density capacity for this project, so it can move forward, so you can maybe get your maximum build out and avoid Act 250, and that will also clarify what your density, whatever your density bonus request may be. And that will hopefully put everybody on the same page, because really kind of right now we're not on the same page. And if that's not palatable, tell the board what you want them to review and we'll start the process.
Well, I think in light of this conversation and the apparent impasse, it doesn't do us any good to try to pursue something that clearly we either haven't articulated to you or you haven't received it in the way that we've tried to articulate it. And I think that there are some questions in terms of how these rules have been applied to our application, as well as questions as how we've applied. I would request respectfully that the board actually does read through this application to understand the full extent of what we have applied for. I think in terms of this process, as applicants, we do look for information from staff. We do look for feedback from the board because you're ultimately the authority having jurisdiction. Chris is going to refer this to you in his capacity, but ultimately you still say yes or no. And that is a discretionary act that you have. There are measurables and those can be checked, but for the most part, the applicant's still looking for guidance on how the town would like to see this move forward. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's no point in spending any more time because it seems as though we have one major hinge point here. And if it means us meeting with Chris before we meet with the board, and if it means legal representation, then that's unfortunate, but I guess there's really no point in trying to review a criteria that has been overshadowed by some other criteria. So I guess with that, thank you for your time, and I guess we'll try to set up a meeting with Chris.
So do you want us to continue until the 24th?
Yes, please.
Can I?
I think that would make
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So, Chris, this is a question to you. First of all, I just want to say that the application before us, there's a lot of information here. I mean, it's clear that your team has done an exceptional amount of work. And I think it's clear that we spent an hour trying to determine if we're on the same page, right? And as I look forward to diving deeper into this application, Chris, I'm wondering if, the staff notes that you presented to us, again, this started with an apology about a misinterpretation of an 8-lot versus a 17-lot. Are the staff notes that you presented to us based on reviewing a 17-lot application? Can we even use that now as a gauge to then determine your interpretation, or do we need to revamp those staff notes based on what the application is actually asking? I think there's a lot of how do we proceed with that? Like with us being able to review the right information and your interpretation of it.
I guess the short answer, stay tuned. Because depending on what's determined for the continuation to open up, that's going to basically trigger necessary amendments to the staff notes in the sections, and I'm gonna have to provide that information. Once we're able to make the determination on what is the allowed density ask and what is the process or steps to go through. So there is a large section of the staff notes is probably going to remain unchanged because it deals with general design and things like stormwater or soil erosion or parking or things along those lines. Those won't really be impacted because they're not project. They cover the whole overall project, but they're within the areas of the design. But there'll be other sections that basically will have to be amended because of the new information. So that's why I say stay tuned.
Okay, but for all intents and purposes, the application that we have and the materials that you've submitted reflect an 8-lot, your intended submission, pending any other amendments that you would make.
Phase 1 is the layout that we'll bring back to you as our final 8-lot for this part of the construction. And we're not changing the road, we're not going to change the house sites. Stormwater will be the same, septic and water.
Okay.
So all those technical aspects of the application, I don't see changing at all.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, thank you.
good.
So we need a motion for a continuation.
I'll make a motion that this application be continued to January 25th, was it?
Yes. Yeah.
A second?
Yeah.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Good.
Okay. We have
Thank you.
you have one more item?
Joe, I'm back in the office on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday next week.
Sure. Just
Yeah.
send me an email with your calendar and we'll
Okay.
set something up.
Okay, yeah. So for the public and anybody who's on listening, if you're still interested in this project, it will be the same link and everything provided for the hearing on the 25th of January. There'll be an agenda that'll be posted on the website. This will be basically the first agenda item because there's a continuation. So it'll be, beginning right around 7 on the 25th for those who want or are interested in continuing to participate within this review. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I just introduce myself real quick. John Kingston.
Oh, hey, John.
Thanks.
Can you stick around for a second?
Sure.
Okay. We got to approve minutes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then basically we're going to turn off the recording, and then we're going to chat just for a quick second.
Okay.
Okay. Tom, your information and request got forwarded to the board, so it's part of the record.
We'll be in touch.
Good, thank you, Tom.
I have a modification on item 1 that Mr. King did not call the meeting to order.
Yep.
And I propose that we approve the minute. Anybody else have any changes?
It's just difficult to read with the numbers in the middle instead of,
Oh, okay.
but substance-wise, or is that not in the printed
It's
version?
not in the printed version.
Oh, okay, the online version is, oh, you're right. What do you know? Never mind. Online, it's all shifted around. But I move that we approve the minutes of October 22nd.
Okay.
12th,
I'll second
sorry.
it.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ed, you want to approve the minutes?
Can I abstain from those? I'm not seeing a record that I received them.
Yeah, you can
They're
abstain.
online.
Are they posted online or were they
Okay,
sent via
okay.
email?
They may not have, I don't think they were sent.
I don't remember. They were in October. I would assumed I would have sent them back then, but I don't know.
I did not review them, so I'll abstain.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is, everybody who's still online, I'd like to ask you to drop off, please, or I will remove you. Please. Thank you.